Hello and welcome to Uni Entity. Today we're going to be talking about a video that I made, which was the Racism Doesn't Exist video. This video has gotten more views than I ever expected, and it's climbing as well, but I'm getting more and more questions every day on this video. When I first started Uni Entity, I used to hand out booklets in Brooklyn on Flatbush Avenue in front of a church. And I remember having those mini booklets. And those mini booklets I used to hand out to the people. One of the topics was racism doesn't exist. When I handed out those mini booklets, my life was threatened. I had people walking up to me saying they were going to stick me with an ice pick in my chest. And the only reason they didn't do it was because the church had a camera. So every day I had to call the police before I left because the guy who threatened me with the ice pick was standing waiting for me for hours. Okay? They hated this topic. Racism doesn't exist. The crazy part is, a month and a half later down the line, that same person who threatened me joined Uni Entity and is today handing out mini booklets in Brooklyn. I'll explain exactly what happened in detail. The owner of that church, his name was Pastor Rob. Pastor Rob had a little over 300 members of his church. His father, who used to own the church before him, had double his members, 600 church members. Now, Pastor Rob wanted to change his format. He didn't think that 300 churchgoers was going to be enough to sustain the church to keep it open. I didn't know about any of this until he told me. Now, every single Sunday before he went into the church, he would pick up one of my mini booklets. About a month into receiving my booklets, he collected every single topic. Remember, the Book of Knowledge and Life has 90 chapters. He collected every single mini booklet. And every Sunday he would walk up to me and say, "Can I use your mini booklet in my sermon?" And I would tell him, "Listen, you don't need to ask me, just use it." But even though I said that, he still would ask every single Sunday, "Can I use your mini booklet? I want to talk about this, this, and that in the sermon." And I would say yes. Now, another month after that, Pastor Rob closed the church. One Sunday I went there and it was closed. No one can get in. People were waiting outside. It was a shock. I couldn't believe that he closed the church. A week later, he walks up to me and he told me why he closed the church. He said that he no longer believes in the format. He does not believe what he's speaking. And that in the past month and a half, he's been preaching the mini booklets from Uni Entity. He said that he wanted permission to turn his church into the Church of Uni Entity. I told him I needed time to think about that. He then said no problem, came back every single week asking, can I? And he even showed me this blueprint of what he was going to do. Finally, I said, yes, you can do it. I'm okay with it. I thought to myself, what harm could it be? He's only trying to help people and better people. His goal was to turn the 300 people into 3,000 people, which I thought was impossible. It's just, I didn't think he could do that. 3,000 people is insane. He didn't get 3,000 people anyway. He got 11,000 people. He turned that church from 300 people to 11,000 people. Now guess what? Not only is his church packed, he had to open up the balcony of the church. He had to do construction to push the back offices and break down the walls so that he could fit 1,100 people into that church. 1,100 people. The church was packed every single Sunday. Pastor Rob said it was just too packed that he started looking for stadium-like churches. Now, it got so busy on the Sundays that he had to start giving out tickets. Imagine this, tickets. And so when I would go there on a Sunday, there'd be people outside selling tickets to get into the church. Have you ever heard of that? People selling tickets to get into a church? It's mind-boggling. To me, anyway. I've never seen that in my life. And I only went one Sunday, and Pastor Rob didn't know I was there. Most people, even though I have this YouTube channel, most Uni Entity members don't even know I am the creator of Uni Entity. This video is the reveal of that. Uni Entity members don't know that I am the creator. I remember I have this channel, and I remember I was in a Home Depot, and a person walked up to me and said, I'm also a Uni Entity follower, and I was thinking about creating my own YouTube channel just like you. He thought I was a follower, but I am the creator of Uni Entity. When I went to the gathering, the very first gathering in Brooklyn, when over 1,000 people attended, nobody knew who I was there either. I wanted my privacy because we have over 3 million followers right now. And I really didn't want notoriety. I created the YouTube channel to share the knowledge. I didn't share it for notoriety. And I never wanted notoriety. And when that person walked up to me in Home Depot, you have no idea how uncomfortable I felt. Incredibly uncomfortable. I just don't like notoriety. So I did this reveal here. I also want to explain why I said that the history of slavery is not true in America. One of those 300 church members that used to belong to Pastor Rob's church before he changed it to Uni Entity. One of his members was Letitia Adams. Letitia Adams, she was going to college for investigative journalism. As a graduation present, her mother gave her a trip to Africa. Now, Letitia Adams only had African clothing. She didn't own a single pair of jeans, t-shirt, any kind of American clothing. She only owned African clothing. Letitia Adams was born in America. She was ashamed to tell people she was born in America. If you asked her where she was from, she would tell you Africa. Now, before she went to Africa, she was really angry with me because she thought I was responsible for the closing of her church. I told her I didn't own the church. Pastor Rob owned the church. She said to me, I want to make a bet with you. If I can come back from Africa with proof and evidence that racism exists and that the history of slavery is true in America, would you close Uni Entity? I said, well, what would you give me in return if you don't find this evidence? She said that she would join Uni Entity. I says, how do you even know that I even want you to join Uni Entity? She says, well, then I'll write you a check for $10,000. I immediately shook her hand and said yes. The following day, I went down to the lawyer. I had him draw out papers, and she signed the papers. I had one contingency. The 10 days that she was in Africa, she had to call me each day for 10 minutes, either on a video call or a regular phone call, which she did. She didn't break our contract. Her goal was to go to 3 of the main tribes to collect the scribes from the tribes to be able to reveal the true history of slavery. Now, she went to Ghana, Nigeria, and Benin. Now, when she went to Ghana, she got the scribes there. She got the scribes in Nigeria. She got the scribes in Benin. And she got it all translated in Benin. We read the translations together. Now, I am going to tell you and reveal to you what those translations said. I also am going to make a video showing the scribes as well. Here's what the scribes said. Now, mind you, all 3 scribes said the exact same thing, even though they were thousands of miles apart from one another. The scribes said the tribes were always at war with one another over property lines. So, in other words, one tribe would be on this side of the line, the other tribe would be on the other side, and they'd be at war with where that line was. During the war, they would capture enemies from rival tribes. They would dig holes between 5 feet and 9 feet deep. These holes were like trenches. They would cover the holes with wooden gates, like bars. They would have one of the soldiers guarding the hole. What they did with these captured enemies, they would either offer them up to the gods as sacrifices, or they would the leader of the tribe would eat them alive because they thought that their body parts gave them power and strength. Now, a couple of years of this practice, along came the transatlantic slave trade and the Saharan slave trade. Now, the tribes and the scribes describe the people that came as Arabs and Northern Africans, black Africans, that translated for the Arabs. They offered immense value for these captured enemies. Now, what is immense value? The wealth of these tribes are according to how many goats each tribe has. The transatlantic slave trade realized this, and so did the Saharan slave trade. They would hoard goats, and they would offer between 2 to 3 goats per slave, per captured enemies. These tribes became rich overnight, because if you have 20, 30 goats, you're a wealthy tribe. They realized this, and now these tribes realized that their captured enemies had value. They went from capturing 1 to 2 enemies to capturing 10 to 12 to 13 enemies. When the business got so good, they created a stopping point in Benin. Now, this stopping point was a place where they would bring the slaves, and only the ones that were willing to leave would go. Those that were not willing to leave would be sent back to the tribes. Now, they were sent back to meet their fate, which was either being offered up to the gods or eaten alive. Either way, they were going to get killed. So they were happily going on that boat, okay? Now, American history would have you believe, according to television series like Roots, that 15 white men armed with ropes and nets captured 200 African warriors. This is what they would have you believe. And this is just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Okay? Even if you took 15 men today, armed with weapons of today's modern weapons, and brought them to Africa to capture 200 African warriors, even two things is going to happen. Either the warriors are going to kill the 15 men, or the 15 men are going to kill the warriors. This is the two things that's going to happen. There's no way they're going to get 200 people willing to go on the boat. So now, once Letitia found this out, and she found out the truth, she started crying hysterically. She threw away all her African clothing, and she joined Uni Entity. I never took her money, by the way. She now is one of the biggest advocates for Uni Entity. She is out there 3 to 4 days a week giving out mini booklets. She is committed and devoted to Uni Entity. Now, this is the true history of slavery. Now, once the slaves came here in America, the Southern whites, which was a lawless society, purchased those slaves. They participated in slavery, but this was the Southern whites. The Northern whites refused to do that. Now remember, the North was where the majority of the white population was. The Southern whites was the minority. So when people say white people created slavery, this is just not true at all. At all. It was those Northern Africans and those Arabs that started slavery. Those Southern whites participated, and the Northern whites would not put up with it, and they fought and died to stop it. So no one could ever say that white people created slavery, because they didn't. So my great-great-grandfather, who fought and died to free slaves when he fought with the Northern Army, he's a part of those Southern whites? No. Does he owe reparations? Do I owe reparations? No. We fought and died to free slaves. So we're going to talk about more on this video. I really want to get into the political side of it, because those Southern whites were Democrats. The KKK were Democrats. The people that created the Jim Crow laws were Democrats. The Confederate soldiers that fought and died to keep slavery were Democrats. So I really want to get into that in another video. Otherwise, it would just take forever. I want to end this video like I end every video. I love all humans, because every human has a soul, and that soul is pure. And anything that comes from the entity can only be pure. And the soul comes from God. I want to wish each of you an incredible and a wonderful day.